today we are talking about one of my all-time favorite foods, soup. Soup is an amazing food for so many reasons, and it happens to be National Soup Month right now. So I reached out to my good friend and colleague, Dr. Sally Lamont, and we are just going to throw down and talk about all the deliciousness that is soup. But first, I'm going to tell you just a little bit about her. So Dr. Sally Lamont is a naturopathic doctor and an acupuncturist with 3 decades of experience in functional medicine. So she practices in Larkspur, California, and specializes in chronic health problems, focusing on digestion, hormonal imbalances, immune challenges, and cognitive decline. Dr. Sally has a firm belief that food is medicine, and one of her favorite places to be is in the kitchen. Sally, thank you so much for being here.
I'm so glad to join you today.
It's kind of crazy. You and I were just talking about the fact that a lot of people don't know that it's National Soup Month. And so there's not really a lot of attention, but soup really is a fabulous food.
It is truly one of my favorite things, and I'm always surprised when I think that they don't fully appreciate the healing power of soup. So I'm thrilled to get to toss that idea around with you today.
Well, so tell me, why is soup one of your favorite foods?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that it is truly delicious. I love soup. So we have to start with the tantalizing array of flavors that you can get into one pot. And they can be, well, there aren't too many savory soups, but there are sweet soups, but mostly savory, but they can be cool, they can be hot. I really love a big pot of hot soup cooking on the stove during a cold winter month like January.
And it does make the house smell good. That's always one of the best things. People walk in, they're like, what are you making?
Yeah, it's in a way it's the original comfort food. I think our ancestors, as soon as they were able to make a vessel and cook over an open fire, it all started with soup. You know, there's that old story of the nail soup, how the
Oh, yeah.
stone soup, there's
Stone
various
soup. Yeah.
versions of it, but the community would come together, offer an onion or a carrot or a stalk of celery, whatever they had, and they'd build out a soup. And one of the things that I think is cool about it is it is a one pot meal, so you're not stuck cleaning up a lot of things. And because it's a one pot meal, it's fairly easy to do. You know, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, starting with a broth, sometimes starting with sauteing veggies to bring out their flavor. Um, I was thinking one of the things I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that's often the base of a soup is this French concept of the mirepoix,
Mhm.
which is, you know, minced carrot, onion, celery. Sometimes it's fennel, sometimes there's red pepper, but that savory, aromatic blend of vegetables is often the base, and then we can add broth, water, vegetable broth, or chicken broth, and build out the soup from there.
Absolutely. And, I think one of the most fabulous things about soup is how versatile it is, because one of my favorite things to do is to go rummaging through my vegetable drawer for all those things that are maybe getting a little close to not great anymore. I mean, they're still edible, but they don't look as pretty. And
Right.
you just chop them up and throw them in there and nobody knows.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And, you know, I want to mention my Dr. Sally's Kitchen website, where I have a set of 10 soups, has, speaking of versatility, 4 different kinds of chicken soup. I think, you know, when you go to each continent and really each country has its own spin on chicken soup. So I've got a traditional chicken soup, but not the noodle type because we
Mhm.
don't do gluten and I don't want that starchy stuff in there. So I put in things like parsnips and some Yukon Gold potatoes instead. But I do a Thai coconut chicken soup and a tortilla style chicken soup and, Spanish flavors. And then my mother-in-law's Jewish chicken soup, which is a little different than the classic, and it's blended with some parsnips, which almost makes it kind of almost seem creamy when it isn't. So talk
Wow.
about versatility. Uh, Soup offers that great option.
And one of the other fabulous things about soup is it's a hydrating food. We tend to forget that, but we need hydration year round.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think about it in the summer, maybe not so much in the winter, but soup can be a great way to hydrate as well.
Absolutely. And I think that that is incredibly important during these winter months when we're struggling to protect ourselves from the range of viruses that are going around. So to be able to have this pot of, I mean, my recipes are fairly large. You might look at it and go, "Oh my God, I'll never eat that." Well, yeah, you will, because you're going to freeze containers of it when you come limping home from work one day feeling a little under the weather. In 10 minutes, you've defrosted and warmed up that soup. But you've got this vessel full of hydration,
Yeah.
and then you get to put in the aromatic vegetables and herbs and the protein of your choice. And in the end, that soup actually becomes medicine.
Oh, such a great thing. Soup as medicine. I love that. One of my other favorite things about soup, and I know you feel the same way because we both talk about this a fair amount, is the fact that soup is a great vehicle for adding things that have such wonderful nourishing value like turmeric and garlic and ginger and some of the spices. And that just really gives it a boost, makes it taste even better, but nourishes the body on such a deep level.
Right, right. It is providing that spectrum of phytonutrients, the colored pigments in veggies and fruits that talk to our genes, that are actually communicating with our genes to do things like turn down inflammation and improve the cell cycle of replication and just generally be something that promotes our health in a way that few other single dishes can do. I think it's awesome.
And the nice thing about soup is, like you said, it is the original one pot meal, but it's also great as a starter to start the digestion.
Yes. In Japan, they have miso soup for breakfast. And we're all stuck on, eggs or some kind of a grain for breakfast, but it's a really wonderful thing when you're wanting to start off light to just have some miso soup in the morning. It's warming, it's hydrating, it's satisfying, and it's really good for the gut. Probably one of the original soups was bone broth because
Mm.
they, would hunt animals and knew that the marrow contained the vital nutrients of the bone and all. They didn't know it had collagen in it, but they knew it was good for them and sustaining. And so they'd boil those bones for a couple of days, adding in herbs and nutrients. But we're lucky that we live in a time where we've been able to bring the flavors of the world to almost every grocery store in America. So we can spin out a gingery version of chicken soup one night, like a Tom Kha Gai, the chicken soup that's popular in Thailand. Oh, and I wanted to do a little show and tell. Speaking of herbs,
Okay.
in my chicken soup, the more classic chicken soup, I put in something. I'm going to see if I can show it to you here. These are little sticks of astragalus. Astragalus is a Chinese herb, and these are a little smaller than the kind I first encountered in when I studied Chinese medicine and did my acupuncture training in the 80s. They were larger, more like a tongue depressor, but they are a little stick like this. And in Chinese medicine, they make something between soup and tea and put astragalus right into the soup as
Mm.
it's cooking, in the end, it doesn't impart much flavor, but it has some profound uh, anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory qualities. A lot of research being done on astragalus, even in working with COVID and other respiratory infections. So it imparts that into the soup as it's cooking. And then you just pull the little tongue depressors out and throw them away because by then they're just kind of like hydrated little woody bark kind of things, and you pitch them, but their nutrients have been, assimilated into that broth. So it's an excellent way to give your immune system an
A
extra.
little boost. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so fab. So I have to ask you before we wrap up, what's your favorite soup?
Oh gosh, that is a tough call. I really would have to say, I would have to say my chicken soup. It's the
Mhm.
first soup listed in my site. I like chicken soup because A, I like chicken, but I like the way all those flavors come together. And I put a small can of tomatoes into
Mhm.
mine. So it gives it a little Italian flair, kind of balances the flavors. One of the things I wanted to mention before we wrap here is one of my favorite soup cookbooks is from my friend and colleague, Rebecca Katz.
Oh, I
She
love
is
her.
a
Yeah.
trained chef, and she's written a cookbook called Clean Soups, which has something like, 50 to 100 soups in there. But I thought that the way she spoke about how to make sure your soups turn out great was really important. And she has a little formula that she calls FASS, FASS, and that stands for fat, acid, salt, and sweet. And so these are the flavors that you want to balance as you go along in the soup. You may have made a soup with all the right stuff in it, but if you haven't put any salt in it, it's
Mhm.
just not going to come alive. If you discover you've put a little too much salt in, then you might want to come in and put a little extra fat in to try to, adjust that, or put a little bit of sweet, and that could just be a teaspoon of something like maple syrup just to balance it, and a squeeze of lemon juice, or the addition of some tomatoes can just make the whole thing pop. So I think it's really important as you're cooking soup to taste it as you go along and make sure that in the end, before you serve it and before you freeze those containers for cold, wet nights ahead, you have achieved that balance that's going to just make your taste buds so happy and really provide that comfort for your body, mind, and soul.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I love that tip about fast. I will definitely write that down below so that we have that. Dr. Sally, thank you so much for being here. It was really great to talk with you. And I hope that anybody listening to this will use this as the kickoff point to regularly add soup to your diet. Such a great food. You can't go wrong. So thank you for being here and sharing your wisdom. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. You're my soup sister, and I'm really
I
glad
love
you.
that. We'll be
Yeah,
soup sisters together.
we will. So here's to your health, Mira, and thanks for having me join you today.
Thank you. You too. Take care, folks.
Bye.